a couple of them were still hesitant. I had to go and have one-to-one meetings with them afterwards, like informal discussions. And really, it all just stemmed from fear. Most of the obstacles we faced in this project was just people fearing things that actually weren't true. And some of them had experience with Iris in the past from previous schools. And I think sometimes Iris hasn't always had a fair rap in terms of, I think some schools in the past used it a bit more for an accountability tool than a developmental tool. And so they were nervous about how we were going to package this, but they were behind the mantra. The second part of that was obviously, you know what it's like being a senior leader, priorities. So myself and Louise had to really be on our senior leadership team to be like, you will be in that session, you will be part of this, your coaching buddy is relying on you. You need to let me know if we need to, you know, pivot or anything like that. And in the end, you know, they all wanted to be there, but sometimes, you know, things happen. Like we had some pretty serious safeguarding things happen and people had to step out, but actually we found ways round that. And then the second big thing that happened that we really thought was going to push us back, because the staff had generally been really, really receptive, was one member of staff really struggled. They'd had a bad experience with Iris way back in the past when they were training, and not at our school, at another school, and we didn't realize how much of a reaction they were having to this. They hadn't really said anything, and then they just ran out of a staff training in front of the entire staff body crying. And we my professional tutor came over to me and she was like, oh, so and so's just left crying. What do we do? And I'm in the middle of delivering. We were in like a 2-minute like break, and I was like, right, okay, we're gonna have to swap places. So Lou carried on delivering, and I had to go and find this person, and basically what we did in the end is we heard it all out. We're not going to force anyone to do anything they're not comfortable with. Yes, it was a whole school objective. Yes, everyone else was on board. So what we actually did was we created a plan for immersion with that person over an 18-month period. And it started with they were a coaching buddy, but they didn't have to record themselves. They were just part of the conversations in a trio. Then it went to them being in a coaching buddy, but not recording themselves. And then it kept moving and inching forward towards them fully participating. And actually, they felt more comfortable with that. We made sure that one of our Irish champions was present in any of those informal conversations we had, and it was a champion that person was close to and felt supported by, and so what we wanted to do was, yes, we wanted them to come on board and be part of it with everyone else, but we had to reimagine a very slow burn to get them to feel comfortable with it. And so that was a really crazy for us.
Amazing. Well, I mean, again, the two massive takeaways there for anyone who's listening now: get SLT on board, and then 100%. You know, go immersion for those that are a little bit more reluctant. Well, we're lucky to have Andy here as well, who is he's the founder and managing director at Iris Connect. So welcome, Andy. You've been working in schools for 17 years. Wow. He's got grey hair. Well, let's switch to Andy for a little bit. I mean, you just heard SJ describe, you know, what's possible in kind of one school. From your viewpoint, what is like distinctive about what they've done at NCA?
I mean, been enormously successful in the way that they've implemented. I think thinking things through to the level to which they clearly have has greatly aided in the implementation of an ambitious professional learning program. The thing that's really sort of struck me was the fact that on a number of occasions you were talking about kind of creating room for people to make mistakes or creating a non-judgmental environment and all this sort of stuff. And actually what that kind of resonated with was, you know, having read many years ago some of the sort of foundational work in the space of adaptive expertise, Hatano and Inaki, I can never pronounce his surname, but they were looking specifically at the environment environment that fosters adaptive experts rather than routine experts.
Right.
And by the way, we'll come put a pin in that, because we're talking about the inclusion agenda. Then how important is it for a teacher to be able to adapt and respond to what's put in front of them? It's huge. But for them, the number one was that environments which had inherent variation can foster adaptive experts. And of course, what greater environment with greater variation are you going to come
pretty
across
dynamic
than a classroom? But number two on the list was room to make mistakes.
Right.
These environments where we see adaptive experts, we value the mistake. The mistake is a learning opportunity.
Sure.
The second one, of course, was like valuing the why. So not just what, but the why that sits behind what we're doing. And crucially, the why and the what were subject to lots and lots of professional dialogue on an ongoing basis, and reflection. So like surfacing the thinking that sits behind the doing through reflection. And then, anyway, the point is that you touched on a number of those sort of kind of key points there in that presentation, showing that the cultural environment is central to the type of expertise that you're able to generate.
Yeah, nice. Well, of course, you're working with all loads and loads and loads of schools, both nationally and internationally. From your point of view, what's the single biggest reason why we've got this sort of tug of war? Why does it persist in schools?
I mean, I think for the obviously the reasons you identified in the first place, that we've got these innate need for accountability, but then for agency, but on the other side, outside of the spectrum, we've got people with a different hat on whose job it is to ensure consistency and to ensure equality of opportunity for people. So sitting within that, there's this sort of moving point, which is kind of the optimum degree of autonomy. But I think one of the sort of challenges that we see is actually kind of a historical one. This is a bit of a long story short, but back in the day, when we first kind of launched Iris, and when it sort of kind of exploded a little bit, we were shocked by how many schools were coming on board with the system. We originally built it to support coaching, because you have to have an understanding, a shared reality of what we're talking about in order to have a meaningful coaching conversation. But one of the very most highly reported uses of the system was the use of the system for self-reflection.
Okay.
And people reviewing the video independently and making decisions about what they wanted to do moving forward. The problem was that we may have solved for the reality aspect, like grounding my thinking in the real world, but there was a whole bunch of things we hadn't solved for. So, structure. What is a meaningful structure to engage in self-reflection or coaching?
Right.
We hadn't solved for sort of guidance. I only see what I value, right? So how do I reflect if I haven't got the knowledge, expertise, rich schema sitting behind me to enable me to do that? And how do we sort of support people to then make a really concrete next step without the lethal mutations that you're talking about? And I think we were a little bit vulnerable to that initially, but that's been the focus of our work, is to create these spaces where, like, the pathways to give people that sequence and that structure, AI tools to be able to bring that kind of guidance and get us out of siloed thinking, and then obviously the ability to deploy content and to enable like smart accountability in the system, like was just being described, where you can kind of see if someone's stuck and stalled, so you can use your time more effectively to go and support them. So that's kind of where we've been. The problem we've been grinding on for a long time is, okay, autonomy is fantastic, but it has to be happening within a context that is actually driving things in the right direction.
And I think that's really important, because there may be people listening who are thinking, well, we do a lot of that with just, standard observation, or let's just get some cameras and we'll let people kind of share videos. But Iris does so much more than that. And I think SJ kind of described it really well, the integration of the walkthroughs, the monitoring, all that stuff. And I know you've showed me some of the AI stuff, which is really powerful, and I guess will only kind of get better. If there are leaders listening to this who are like, wow, I need to get involved in this, what are the concrete steps that they can take? This is to Andy. This is.
Oh yeah, just hit us up on our website. We'll come and do a consultation with you, understand your needs and all of that sort of stuff. That's sort of like with us. But in terms of the concrete steps you might want to take internally, is doing some level of auditing around the readiness to engage in this kind of work. You can engage in pretty much all sort of environments, but it's about laying the groundwork first and making sure that, you know, the worst thing is those sort of it's not, you can't say Chinese whispers. What's the right word? So when things like kind of like get a little bit out of hand and people talk
lethal
about lethal mutation of a message, shall we say, because there's an absence of information. So, you know, pathfinders and champions are great, but if you only talk to them, everyone else is going to come to some very bad conclusions about what's going on over there in that little group. So it's about making sure that we're sort of laying the groundwork first.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's I think, you know, SJ alluded to this as well, that, you know, there's almost a little bit of you have to go slow to go fast, don't you? You have to get those foundations, enabling conditions. I think SJ talked about psychological safety, you know, a culture of error. You've got to make it safe to try things, and, you know, this idea of mistakes. Well, let's switch to the we've had some great comments and questions in the chat, and so let's spend a bit of time having a look at these. And SJ, don't be surprised that a lot of this is going to come your way, I would imagine. So
keep it short and sweet.
We're going to start right at the top. And so with the coaching buddy pairs, how did you organize a session?
So I'm not sure if you mean how did we organise the pairs or how did we put a session together, but I'll quickly go on both. So in essence, we put together a list of our list of staff, and we removed any hierarchy, and we actually started picking out of a hat. And placing people together, and then myself and the teaching and learning team basically did some tweaks and changes to make sure that we were putting people together that we felt would work well together, and two, making sure that at least one person in that group would be really on board, so that it kind of created this natural accountability of the other person didn't want to turn up to the session and they hadn't done it, because the other person they know will have done it and will be saying to them, "Oi, why have you not done it?" So there's some clever jiggery pokery with things like that. In terms of the actual session itself, after we'd introduced it all, we used a pathway. Anna and the design team at Iris Tech were amazing and basically created us a bespoke pathway that runs through and unlocks after each section. So you have to complete a section, it unlocks, and a bit like a game, I suppose. And it stopped anyone from just speeding to the end. They had to go through the process, which again applied some accountability, but at their pace. And the sessions were a pre-coach session, so they'd have 20 minutes, coach A would coach the coachee, and then they'd swap for 20 minutes or 25 minutes. They'd go off to wherever they wanted to do that. And because they had to fill out parts of the pathway, we knew they just hadn't gone off with, all the biscuits we brought and a cup of tea. And just to say on biscuits, we did flood each session with a lot of chocolate biscuits.
High quality.
And I know that sounds ridiculous, but the staff would actually turn up, and if the biscuits were out late, they'd be like following you around the room while you put out the biscuits. So that really got them there on time, because they wanted to make sure they actually got a good set of biscuits. And don't underestimate the power of sweet treats in these things.
I'm surprised that didn't creep up in the EEF, professional development as one of the mechanisms, This is another great question. And it reminds me of in my early days of using video in lessons and that, you get that situation where the kids misbehave on the video, and then you have to remind them that they're being videoed. That you've got evidence of them misbehaving, and they go, "Oh, right." So how did you get the students kind of used to the filming in the classrooms?
So first of all, to say that because we did it with the ECT program first, and that was a portion of the school, the kids were getting used to it on a smaller level first, and obviously it's got quite helpful. The screen goes black when it's recording, so actually it just looks like it's not on in the background, and that's actually a really useful tool because the kids can't see themselves in it and so on. We just started using it. The teachers started by telling the kids, I'm recording the background. It's about recording me, not you. It's so that, you know, we can all work together and be collaborative. And the kids were like, all right, then you're not recording me. I'm okay with this. And obviously Iris has got fantastic GDPR. And so it's fine to like record within the session, within the school and so on. And now the kids just don't even notice. You set up the Iris kit and they don't bat an eyelid. We had a few occasions where like you'd watch it back, and while you were writing something on the board, the kids were going woohoo in the camera behind it.
That's a little bit of fun.
In a sweet, innocent way, But generally, they just don't even realise it's on half the time. They're set up in so many classrooms, just generally, that they just don't even realise what's going on.
And what a powerful message to the students that teachers want to get better, that teachers are engaging and they want to be a better teacher for them. I mean, what a great kind of message. All right, well, let's move on. And then we've got another one down here about kind of workload is a natural challenge. And of course, sometimes, you know, this idea of barrier to colleague development. Was there any kind of negative like links to workload at all?
No, not at all, because we had specially designed it so that it was within the 1265 and within our training. In Meridian Trust, we have training meetings on a Tuesday afternoon, and we made sure that all of this fit within that time scale. And so the pre-coach, the post-coach, time to even review the lesson recording, because your coach would review your lesson recording before you go into the post-coach conversations. You'd review all of it was built in, and then you were recording lessons that, you know, you were delivering anyway. And teachers are always expecting to trial new strategies, and because they could see the benefit of the goal is you're trying to make something better for your own development, your own peace of mind, etc., the motivation was high, so staff wanted to plan it into their sessions. And really the only additional time it caused outside of teacher agreed workload was go and find the Iris kit and turn it on. That was literally it. Everything else was built into our directed time on purpose. One, to avoid additional workload. We didn't want it to be a secondary thing. We wanted it to be a priority. And two, we wanted to make it a priority. So we wanted to say we're investing in the time and the money because we really believe in what we're doing here and this equipment and this kind of program that we're putting together. And by doing that, it made staff realise that, oh yeah, we are investing in this, we need to be part of this. Whereas I think if we'd done it on the outside, they'd have been like, oh yeah, if I get time, I haven't had time, etc. It just wouldn't have worked the same. So we purposely build it into our directed hours.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, again, we're conscious of time, and we've got a few ones here. I think you've talked a bit about how you selected the coaches, so that's fine. Talked about kind of whether it was mandatory, and I guess where there was some resistance, you listened to why, and then kind of implemented that almost like it's slow immersion, which makes sense.
And we were quite, just to say, we were quite clear in our marketing of this. Like, I do think there is something in how you package this, and the motto was the developmental, not judgmental, but it was also we are on a journey. We are all on a journey. And so actually staff felt like this is a joint community effort, and then we just had to be careful with some of our people within that community. But yeah, it was very much packaged as we're all on this ship. So come with us. Yeah, where the land of chocolate biscuits live.
I love that. Well, we're going to finish up. We'll go negative, then positive. I suppose one thing we need to talk about is how do you manage kind of underperformance with this? Because it feels very supportive and stuff, but I guess there are times when you've got to be challenging.
So I think the main challenge we've seen at the moment is because it's a developmental thing and it's not a judgmental thing, you can't really say that people are underperforming with the trialing of a new walkthrough activity that we've asked them to look at, because they're doing it at their own pace. It's about making mistakes, etc. I think the only underperformance we can see at the moment in terms of them actually participating, because it's built into our directed time and we're always there and so on, it's hard not to be part of it. Obviously, you get absences and things like that, and people that are on trips and so on. So what we had to do was build in an underlayer of a session where we say to the coaching buddy, oh, your partner's not here, so you're going to have this time in lieu, and then you're going to pick up the coaching conversation with them at another point over the next fortnight. And what Louise and I do is we make a list of those people and we go through and we check the milestones to see if they've been completed, and if not, we then get involved and see if we can help in any way. And we haven't generally, we've got, well, not generally, we have, every single person has done it through that process. So if they're not there, we have a plan B for that.
Yeah, and of course, these things, they spiral up, don't they? If people see value in the system, that they see that it's doing what you said it was going to do, then they further invest. I mean, we're out of time now, which is really sad. I mean, the last thing to say, I suppose, is just to say thank you to both of you guys for joining. Thanks to everybody who's been listening. I've got some great ideas. I'm literally going to run back to my trust and start talking about these things. And so I guess for those that are listening, the final message is really, if you've got any further questions, and we've got a few people that want to come and visit SJ, so good luck. You're going to have that would be great. If you've got any further questions, or you want to continue the conversation with someone from the Iris Connect team, then definitely get in touch at irisconnect.com. Take Andy up on his offer. And we'll look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.
Thank you. Just say, if anyone does want to come and visit NCA, you're more than welcome to come and see what we do here. Just get in touch.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. It's been
massive
really
thanks
good
to both of you as well.
decision.
It's been an excellent set of presentations.
Thanks, Andy, to your team. One thing I didn't get to say is how fantastic your team are. Anna and Jenny and Joe and everyone literally have made the process so easy. All my weird and wacky and crazy schemes, they are on board, and we've really created something that is bespoke to NCA, and that's just incredible. You can't really get that with a lot of other platforms. So yeah, it's a really great system.
What a great place to finish.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.